Block joins me, Shashank Mattu. This is a very important day. Dr. Jaishankar is just approaching South Block to assume charge. Shashank, over to you first.
Absolutely, absolutely right. You got me at exactly the right time. Dr. Jaishankar is in fact just arriving. Let me just switch the camera so you can see him. Here he is.
Okay,
Okay,
that's
that's
Dr.
Dr.
Jaishankar
Jaishankar
being
being
received
received
by
by
Foreign
Foreign
Secretary
Secretary
Vinay
Vinay
Quatra,
Quatra.
Jaideep Majumdar, Secretary East, and Pawan Kapoor, Secretary West. A grand welcome for Dr. Jaishankar there at South Block. A very important day, Shashank, over here. We're looking at the External Affairs Minister taking over for a second time. Oh, it seems he's going to speak.
Let me take over. Let me take over. So let me take over. I'll come and so for those of our viewers who didn't hear it, he said, "Let me take over. I'll just be back." So he's just heading in, as you very rightly mentioned. He was received by a committee of very senior officials, the Foreign Secretary Vinay Quatra, as well as the Secretaries East and West, some of the most senior officials. You officials of the External Affairs Minister's office have been here all throughout the morning. In fact, I have behind me a security personnel just bringing in flowers. This place is absolutely crawling with security personnel. Flowers, people have been arranging things for the better part of the half an hour or so that I have been here. And there's been this constant, steady parade of senior officials coming in as well as media coming in. So absolutely a big day. The External Affairs Minister is supposed to go in there, take charge of his ministry, be welcomed by the senior officials, welcome back for his second spell in the job as External Affairs Minister, a job that he took over as in 2019. Of course, he's no stranger to this historic building behind me, South Block. He
Absolutely
joined the
not.
Foreign Service. Absolutely. He joined the Foreign Service in 1977, has risen, held almost every important position in the Foreign Service. He's ambassador to China, ambassador to the United States, ambassador to Singapore, the Czech Republic. So, and also 3 years as Foreign Secretary, after which he became the Foreign Minister. So, of course, he just walked in today and came up, spoke to the media for a little bit, said that he would come back in just a little bit. So, he's promised us just a little bit more of his time. But back over to you.
Okay, we look forward to
Listening
listening
to
to
and hearing what Dr. Jaishankar has to say, but a very significant and important day over here. Modi 3.0, the government, where Raisina Hill remains intact. Shashank, there was a lot of speculation on whether if there's going to be a change of guard in any of those ministries. But across the road, if we talk about the Home Ministry, if we talk about the Finance Ministry over here, South Block, Defense Ministry, and the External Affairs Ministry, all of them absolutely intact. It seems like there's going to be continuum on foreign policy, like you rightly pointed out. This building is no stranger to Jaishankar. Jaishankar is no stranger to this building. He has almost grown from a young diplomat to becoming the External Affairs Minister of India. Who would have known that Shashank last time around when the calls were going in to various people in 2019 to come and take oath, nobody knew that it is not going to be Sushma Swaraj, but a surprise entry, Dr. Jaishankar. And now we are looking at Dr. Jaishankar having assumed office. Show us what's really happening outside. There was a lot of hustle, bustle, and then we'll talk about a little more about Dr. Jaishankar and what could be the challenges that lie ahead for the minister.
Absolutely. So you completely right about the hustle bustle standing right behind me. Of course, I'm also with other members of the media. We were, as the External Affairs Minister was coming in, we were herded into various locations trying to get to prepare for the External Affairs Minister coming. You can also see people coming out of the main entrance of South Block. You also have a complete, many security personnel here. I'll just show you a glimpse. Absolutely, just security personnel. Police is completely teeming with them. Again, I think the External Affairs Minister is expected to just come out again now. But you're absolutely right. When the External Affairs Minister came in 2019, there was very little expectation that he would be the man in charge. But in fact, he's spoken about it himself at length at times. That he was himself unprepared. He had memorably gone. He was a part of the Tata Group for a little while, and he had memorably gone to get better seats at the swearing in 2019 for Ratan Tata and himself, as he was a member of the Tata Group. And after that, he was asked to join the team as External Affairs Minister. So it is a surprise even to him, not just to us humble commentators on foreign policy.
Absolutely. And now, in some time from now, like Dr. Jaishankar said, that he is going to come out and speak. So that is going to be very important. We'll play that out live as he speaks. Again, Shashank, a lot of challenges ahead, a few very important ones, a few that he's managed, he's been able to handle. But to have, how important was it to have someone like Dr. Jaishankar continue at a time when India is at a critical juncture, be it the economy, be it defense or security?
Absolutely. I think that continuity in foreign policy is really the message that is being sent here. Continue in really the major management, because if you were very rightly pointed out that the four members, the five members of the cabinet committee on security, really the major members, which is the prime minister, the home minister, the defense minister, external affairs, and finance, are all being held by the same people. So we do have a large amount of continuity. But you're also right about the overwhelming diplomatic challenges. China remains an issue. That border standoff has been partly resolved, but not entirely. You also have a relationship with America that has been through the doldrums in recent years. And Dr. Jaishankar, of course, who has been in America, has amazing relationships in on both sides of the aisle, politically in America as well as in the diplomatic spectrum, is really going to be in a fantastic position to resolve those tensions. You also have questions about Russia, the Ukraine war, displacement that is generated by the pandemic, continued economic troubles around the world. So it really is also Israel, Gaza, and the Middle East. This is a really plethora of challenges, and I think at this point in time, you want an experienced hand in the foreign ministry, someone who's been there for almost 50 years now. In 2027, 2027, I believe, he'll finish 50 years in the foreign service. So really, it is a strong track record, and I think that the prime minister has recognized that in his time as foreign secretary and as a diplomat, and now as foreign minister, Dr. Jaishankar brings something to the table. Now, I'll also turn your attention to the fact that there are some preparations going on. A lectern is being set up by members of the External Affairs Minister's office just to prepare for the um,
Show us
Show
the
us
for the
the
External
visuals.
Affairs
visuals.
Minister.
Okay.
Absolutely. Let me just walk up closer. I have just mics being set up.
Okay,
Okay,
there
there
you
you
go.
go.
Right. So we're being shooed away,
Oh,
but
nice.
absolutely. But they're setting up the lectern, so I think the External Affairs Minister will be giving us a statement very shortly. So, man of his word, he'll be coming out soon and giving us a short comment on what he thinks the challenges are, what his top priorities will be today, and of course, we'll also love to hear from the mouth of the External Affairs Minister himself about what he plans to achieve in this second term as External Affairs Minister.
I hope
Shashank, you
Shashank, you
get to
get to
field
field
a
a
few
few
questions,
questions,
and
and
it's
it's
not
not
just a
just a
statement.
statement.
Absolutely. I'm going to do my level best to ask him a question. We're all waiting for him with bated breath. I can see the entire media is here, but I'm going to sneak past the cameras and get all our viewers a very good look at the External Affairs Minister when he begins speaking, and then of course I'll follow the question as I am known to do. But yes, absolutely. You are quite right about just the major diplomatic challenges that the External Affairs Minister will face. We also have coming up a very big diplomatic event very soon after the new government takes office, which is the G7 in Italy, for which the Prime Minister is for which India will always have has always had a strong representation. The Prime Minister is gone in recent years, so of course another example of India sitting at the high table. And I believe the director of the External Affairs Minister's office coming. I think the External Affairs Minister is just coming in. He is coming through the hallways of South Block. Let me just get you a glimpse. There he comes.
Okay, you
You
in all
now
probability
probably
have to
have to
go
go
a
a
little
little
ahead.
ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that in the last decade, this ministry has become a very people-centric. You can see that in terms of our improved passport services, in terms of the community welfare fund support that we give to Indians, in terms of how we respond to different needs of Indians when they leave our coast, preparing to leave our coast, and the manner in which we work with other ministries in getting in, in promoting our exports, in enhancing our tourism flows. So this has been the report. So looking at it, definitely I think the two axioms that the Prime Minister has given us, Bharat first, and Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, these will be the two guiding axioms of Indian government. So, and together, we are very confident to position us as Vishwabandhu, a country which is in a very turbulent world, in a very divided world of conflicts and tensions. It would actually position us as a country which is trusted by many, whose prestige and influence will grow, whose interests will be advanced. And I once again deem it an enormous honor to be assigned the responsibility of leading that ministry. I have two very good colleagues who will be joining me as Minister of State. And I, of course, am enormously strengthened by the fact that we have a very dynamic and talented Indian Foreign Service, which is always present to the challenges, which has always been very committed to taking an active role. So, really a great pleasure to meet you all on my first day of work. And thank you very much for coming here. So
you're hopeful that UNSC seat will be possible in next 5 years under your tenure?
I think for us, the role of India, the influence of India, that has been steadily growing, not just in terms of our own perception, but अगर आप देखें दूसरे देश हमारे बारे में क्या कहते हैं, उनको भी लगता है कि भारत जो है सचमुच उनका मित्र है. उन्होंने देखा है कि संकट के समय में कि अगर एक देश ग्लोबल साउथ के साथ खड़ा है तो भारत है. उन्होंने देखा है कि जब G20 की अध्यक्षता के समय में हम लोगों ने अफ्रीकन यूनियन की सदस्यता के आगे किया था, तो दुनिया हम पर विश्वास और हमारी जिम्मेदारियां भी बढ़ रही थी. तो हम ये भी विश्वास है कि मोदी जी के नेतृत्व भारत की जो पहचान जो है दुनिया में रहेगी जरूर. और यूएनएससी का सवाल आपने उठाया, पर इसके अलग अलग और भी पहलू हैं और मुझे पूरा विश्वास है कि उनके नेतृत्व में मोदी 3.0 की विदेश नीति जो है बहुत सफल.
So do you see, Minister, what will be your priorities in the region that we are in, the South Asian region?
It's a very good question you have asked. And you can say that we began the day of spreading it with neighborhood information. कि हमारे जो पड़ोसी जो हैं सब लोग आए और प्रधानमंत्री खुद उनसे मिले. Yesterday I had met individually, called on all the visiting dignitaries, and I can tell you they are leaving with a sense that our neighboring relationships will be the first priority, will be the overriding priority of the Modi government, and that is that.
So, sir, I can very much नवाज शरीफ की आपको पॉलिटिक्स कम्युनिकेशन करते हैं तो क्या पाकिस्तान के साथ भी आप पॉलिटिक्स और अपने फर्स्ट टर्म में आप जो हम लोग रहने चाहिए कौन मीटिंग
नहीं. देखिए, मैंने फर्स्ट टर्म में जो कहा वो आप भी जानते हैं, मैं भी जानता हूँ, तो मेरे मुंह में आप न डालें. पर मैं इतना ही कहूँगा कि जो नवाज शरीफ साहब का जो टेक्स्ट में जो पोस्ट हुई थी, हमारे यहाँ से प्रधानमंत्री ने भी
Send pointers जल्द से यार. जयशंकर जो बोल रहा है pointers. I can hear it very well.
Libyan Parliament has started a probe into the past agreements. Any comments on that? While the president was
मुझे तो सब कुछ इतने clearly सुनाई दे रहा है. हमारे YouTube में सुनाई नहीं दे रहा है इतने अच्छी तरह. हाँ? नहीं YouTube में सुना जयशंकर सुनाई नहीं दे रहा है.
सर अगले 5 साल में चीन को या अगले 5 साल में देखिए मुझे लगता है कि किसी भी देश और खासकर डेमोक्रेसी में एक सरकार को लगातार 3 बार बहुत बड़ी तो दुनिया को जरूर लगेगा कि आज भारत में पॉलिटिकल स्टेबिलिटी और भारत की पब्लिक जो है और अभी तक पिछले 10 साल में जो उन्होंने हमारा रिकॉर्ड देखा तो वो भी उनको भी पता होगा कि हम सचमुच हमारी कोशिश है कि दुनिया के साथ अपने हित तो जरूर आगे रखेंगे पर जो हमारा योगदान होगा वो उसमें भी कहीं हम नहीं पड़े और जो आपने पाकिस्तान और चाइना के बारे में कहा वो अलग देश है रिश्ते भी कुछ अलग हैं तो समस्या जो है वो भी कुछ अलग तो चीन के बारे में हम तो हमारी फोकस तो होगी कि सीमा में जो स्थिति जो है अभी भी कुछ बाकी बचे हुए हैं तो कैसे निपटाया जाए और पाकिस्तान के साथ ये भी आप जानते हैं कि विषय जो है सालों से वो आतंकवाद का विषय जो है क्रॉस बॉर्डर टेररिज्म हाउ डू वी फाइंड a solution so that cannot be the policy. तो चलिए आप सबको एक बार और मेरी ओर से शुभकामनाएं मिलते रहेंगे तो थैंक यू वेरी मच फॉर एज आई सेड फॉर कमिंग बैक सो अर्ली एंड विश यू
Thank you, sir.
Congratulations, sir.
That's Dr. Jaishankar, who has taken office, and it seems like it is going to be a very important agenda that he's looking at. He spoke about India being Vishwa Bandhu and also not just about bridging gaps, but talking about important issues of like China, Pakistan, cross-border terrorism. He mentioned all of that. Shashank Mattu again from South Block. Shashank, a lot of important key takeaways from his opening remarks as the new External Affairs Minister of India. Take it away.
So first of all, I think he started with talking about his in office so far, the 5 years that he's already been External Affairs Minister. He said that, look, you know our record, we've delivered. We did the G20, so we have delivered good, we delivered a great victory by getting the G20 summit, making it a success. We've also made lives easier for ordinary Indians living abroad. For example, Passport Seva. He talked about how much improved the Passport Seva services have been in recent years. He's also talked about Operation Ganga and other operations to rescue Indians in distress abroad. You will recall that over the last couple of years, we've had various conflict situations, whether you look at places like Sudan, whether you look at places like Ukraine, and the Ministry of External Affairs has been able to get, really thousands of Indians, hundreds of thousands of Indians out of these places with minimal loss of life. So he was, of course, priding himself on that. He also said that, whether it's increasing exports and making, greater economic opportunity for India, his ministry has done well on that as well. So he first of all thanked the Indian Foreign Ministry and the Foreign Service officials who, of course, work with him and make part of his team for having helped him achieve that. But he also talked about really what the two big pointers will be in terms of the Prime Minister's direction for foreign policy. He gave two phrases. First was Bharat First, and the second one was Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which means, of course, the world is one family. That was the idea essentially, that we are all brothers. So I think that was also part of India's G20 slogan. So really Bharat First and Vasudeva Kutumakam being, according to the External Affairs Minister, the real direction for the Prime Minister. He also referred to India as a Vishwa Bandhu. This is something we talk about a lot, which is India as a bridging power, in a world that is increasingly divided by conflicts and by disagreements over everything from economic policy to defense to warfare. You have India that is able to maintain good relations with countries all over the world and is able to sort of act as a bridging power to make sure that disagreements can be resolved peacefully and not through conflict. So that was, I think, very important statement from the External Affairs Minister in terms of the self-image that India will continue to push for in terms of its foreign policy, its place in the world over the time that he is External Affairs Minister. And then, he also talked about regional priorities. He took some questions from the media, like I said, a man of his word. And he said, that the South Asian region will remain a key priority. He talked about sort of working, he was asked questions about Nawaz Sharif and on Pakistan. He said that, there are well-known issues that have existed with Pakistan. He also talked about China. He said that China, we have a situation on the border that remains unresolved. He talked about those challenges as well. He was asked about President Muizu of the Maldives and this latest review that has been undertaken. I'm sure we'll bring you more coverage of that through the day. But a review that has been undertaken of agreements that were signed with India during the administration of the previous government. And this was seen by many as, I don't use a provocative phrase, but a slap in the face, because you, of course, had President Muizu be invited to India to attend the swearing-in, and now this review has been launched. So he was asked questions about that, but he said that, look, he met President Muizu. He would be guided by his experience in how, from meeting President Muizu, he was not going to make a judgment on that in front of the media. And finally, of course, he also talked about, like I said, he also talked about a UNSC seat, but really he used that as more of a segue to talk about the policy priorities for how much for India, as well as how much India's influence in the world has gone up in the last couple of years and would continue to increase. So that was, I think, a snapshot version of what the External Affairs Minister said as he took charge of the Ministry of External Affairs for a second time.
Well, he did take charge,
and the Ministry of External Affairs top officials and diplomats were there. We know that the Foreign Secretary Vinay Quatra, received him at the Ministry of External Affairs, flanked by Secretary West Pawan Kapoor and Secretary East Jaideep Majumdar. He has assumed charge, and he did come out and speak of significant areas that would be focus for India. But what is important over here, Shashank, is also to note that from talking about Vishwa Guru to now also talking about Vishwa Bandhu, and it's not a recent change. A lot of people would say that, okay, maybe because of the numbers, India is now saying from Vishwa Guru has come down to Vishwa Bandhu. That's not the case. Even before elections, the External Affairs Minister Shashank had started talking about being Vishwa Bandhu, and in that being first responders. First responders, not just for India and Indians abroad, but also for many other countries across the world where they are in need, but particular focus on the neighborhood. And focusing on the neighborhood, we've not just seen them invite those leaders for the oath-taking ceremony, but also he addressed the neighborhood here. There are problem areas when it comes to the Maldives, Pakistan, but there is also an area that is open to India to really be that bridging gap to become that Vishwa Bandhu.
Quite right. If you go back even just in May and you search the term Vishwa Bandhu, you will find that the Prime Minister said it, the External Affairs Minister said it. It's on India's diplomatic websites. If you look at speeches and remarks made by ministers before, because I don't think it has anything to do with politics. I think it has something to do with how India has always seen its foreign policy. If you go back 75 years ago to what India did to end the conflict in Korea, to now when you see it sort of taking quite a diplomatic role in solving certain issues, it's always seen itself as a country lending a helping hand, as being a bridging power between at one point in time the Soviet bloc and the American bloc, and today of course with the Americans on one side, the West on one side, the other, and Russia and China on the other. India's self-image has always been of a bridging power. So I don't think that this is so much to do with politics. It's always been something that the Prime Minister has said, the External Affairs Minister said, and previous External Affairs Ministers have also said. It's a very crucial part of how India sees itself on the world stage.
Okay, we'll try to play
Dr. Jaishankar's bite yet again in some time from now. But before that, again, Shashank, you're there in South Block. the meetings and the conversations will begin. This is a government that believes in starting and beginning from the word go. Hit the ground running. That's the mantra, and has been the mantra not just for the government but particularly for Dr. Jaishankar. Is there any, and we know that he's going to begin with a very important visit that's due, which is the G7 summit meeting. But before that, there's also the BRICS foreign ministers meeting, which unfortunately Dr. Jaishankar will not be going for, and will be represented by, India will be represented by one of our top diplomats, Secretary Ravi. Having said that, how important would it be for India to focus on this forum when India is now seen by Russia and China, particularly by China, to be more aligned to the West?
Right. No, I think this is certainly a very difficult question. I think it's one of those animating questions of Indian foreign policy right now. How do we simultaneously build a good relationship or keep a strong relationship with Russia, which has really been a diplomatic ally for very many years, but at the same time also understand that, and the external affairs minister has talked about this as well in the past. In fact, one of his great legacies in foreign policy has been engineering that rapprochement with America over the last 10 years. His experience was in America, his understanding was in America, and bringing India closer to Western powers. I think that if you look at how Indian foreign policy has evolved, there's a secular trend towards towards a closer relationship with the West, because without Western technology and finances and so on and so forth, the task of transforming India gets a lot harder. I think that that's a fundamental reality that the foreign ministry and Dr. Jaishankar, I think, helped bring home and make a crucial part of Indian foreign policy. As the external affairs minister once memorably said, India is non-Western, but it is not anti-Western. And this is something that for a long time, was a trope in India, anti-Westernism. So, but you're absolutely right. This tension, I think, will have to be resolved. There's this, when reporting on the BRICS summit last year, there was a serious question about China, the expansion of the BRICS. Lots of countries came in, including Iran, and including another Argentina, which ultimately decided not to join. But a number of countries were brought in, and the overwhelming narrative at that point in time was that China and Russia wanted to bring in more members to make it a more anti-Western grouping. And the reporting at the time was that India had opposed the expansion of the BRICS precisely because it did not want to be painted as an anti-Western forum. Ultimately, that expansion went through, and of course, the government then came out and said that no, actually, we supported this expansion. We just wanted to lay out some criterion. But I think the narrative at that point was set that, in fact, when you look at a forum like BRICS, there is this tension between Russia and China, who may wanted to take it on a path that is very, very different from what India wants to see. India wanted to see it as, yes, pushing for common interests that were, again, non-Western, pushing for non-Western interests, but not anti-Western interests. And I think that there was some concern that perhaps China and Russia were interested in a more anti-Western turn. So absolutely, there is a tension with a grouping like BRICS, and there is always a message in who the government decides to send to a particular visit, and not sending the external affairs minister, sending, of course, a very senior diplomat, but not sending the external affairs minister or so on to attend this meeting, I think says a little something. Of course, the external affairs ministry always says that it's scheduling issues, but I do believe that that ministries are very, very clear generally with the messages they send in terms of who they decide to send. So I think there's definitely a message there about the importance of BRICS.
Well, absolutely.
Importance of BRICS, but also, Shashank, the Russia, China, India trilateral, this entire bloc is going to be very important at a time when we're looking at two very big conflicts, whether it's the Russia-Ukraine war or the Israel-Hamas war. We know that India has taken a very non-aligned position when it comes to the Israel-Hamas war particularly, and has reiterated its long-standing position on a two-state solution. But in terms of how the administration is going to look at these conflicts now, because it's a new government, every other government, Shashank, whether it's the UK, whether if it's France now, that's also going to go to polls, America, they're all going into elections. They're all looking at how, more focused on domestic rather than what the world is grappling with. The United States of America absolutely has its attention now diverted from Russia, Ukraine to Israel, Hamas. In such a scenario, where do you see and how do you see India play a very important role? Why do I ask this is because it's not just Russia engaging and Ukraine engaging India, it's also how the West Asian countries, the Arab world, has engaged India. India could play a very important role, but can it play a far greater role than China? Because China also has been playing a very important role. And this at a time when China is also focused on Taiwan, on South China Sea. So there's a lot going on when it comes to conflict, tensions in various parts. Yes.
But the External Affairs Minister is just leaving the Ministry of External Affairs. You can actually see him in his car.
Okay.
So members of the media just waving him away.
Just coming in. Dr. Jaishankar, after assuming offices, is now leaving South Block.
So that's the news that's just coming in. Those are visuals that are playing on your screen. Shashank Mattu reporting from South Block. Dr. Jaishankar is leaving South Block after having assumed office. A very important day for Dr. Jaishankar, where he spoke of, and he set the agenda, Shashank. He set the agenda. He's outlined the agenda for what it means for the Ministry of External Affairs under him and how it is going to really take that agenda forward. So again, going back to the conversation that we were having, too many conflicts, too many tensions, the role that India could play at a time when India itself is having quite a bit of a problem with China at the border. And he did mention China and the border tensions.
And just to go to what you've been saying, for example, you talked about the Israel-Hamas war. It's been a very, very difficult balancing act for India. When the October 7th attacks took place, when Hamas, of course, attacked Israel, and around 1,200 people were killed, the Prime Minister of India released a statement on Twitter saying that they stand, with Israel. And I think that, what is less talked about is how much that was seen as a symbol by some in the Arab world, that in fact India is now pro-Israel. Since then, India has very much tried to talk about, it has really stressed its support of the Palestinian cause in the past, how much money it's given to Palestinian aid, how much it's fought for recognition of the Palestinian state. In fact, you'll talk about, you've had this recent spree of European countries, Norway, Spain, Ireland, recognizing the Palestinian state. India has recognized the Palestinian state for decades. So India has really tried to stress that record as well. But really, it is like being caught between a rock and a hard place, because at one point you have Israel, and not just Israel, the United States, because we have crucial forums in the Middle East, like I2U2. You talked about India's growing influence in the Middle East. Well, Israel and America are absolutely critical to that, because our closer partnership with those countries has allowed us to build greater influence. But also, you have fantastically strong relationships now with many countries in the Arab world, including the UAE as well as Saudi Arabia. So this question of how does India balance both interests, because both sides are crucially important to India. You've seen cases of India winning a lot of praise for sending about 10 naval ships to the Western Indian Ocean, to the Red Sea after the Red Sea conflict, to just ease the situation there, ensure smooth passage of maritime trade. Many people saw that as the rise of India. But a very important thing that I think is very important to note is that when the United States launched an operation, I think it was called Prosperity Guardian or something of that nature, to a joint multinational exercise to sort of maintain stability in the Red Sea, India did not join that, because India was also very cognizant of the fact that it wanted to maintain an independent position and also not be too closely associated with the Americans and the Israelis, because of how unpopular America and Israel are now in the region. So you can, just with that one example, you can see how India wants to play a role, and its influence has grown in this part of the world. But it's also very, very crucial to understand that it really is treading this really fine line where it's cooperating very closely, but at times it has to step up and tell its partners like America and Israel, as well as in the Arab world, that look, there is only so far we can go. So it's certainly one of those very, very thorny questions for Indian foreign policy, this question of the conflict in the Middle East.
Well, that's absolutely right. And it is going to be one of the biggest challenges when it comes to how India is going to handle this entire situation. But India is not on the or right behind the wheel. It is going to be an important player, but how it plays itself, how it positions itself is going to be very important. Having said that, coming back to closer to the neighborhood, two very important statements, Shashank, that Prime Minister, External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar made was to do with China and Pakistan. We briefly touched upon China, but let's talk about Pakistan. Yesterday, there were two important tweets that were put out. One by Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, and then by Mia Nawaz, which is Nawaz Sharif himself. Shehbaz Sharif's statement was quite terse, quite, a very brief statement, congratulatory message to the Indian Premier. Nawaz Sharif's message, on the other hand, was quite warm. And the responses by the Indian Prime Minister were also same, very brief for Shehbaz Sharif, but warm for Nawaz Sharif. We've seen the situation in 2014. We've seen thereafter the visit by Prime Minister Modi to Raiwind, where he met Nawaz Sharif on his birthday on the 25th of December. It was a rare occasion, after which we saw the terror attacks and all things came to a halt. Now India says talks and terror can't go together, although yes, SAARC is a dead bloc, but in many other blocs, particularly SCO, where India and Pakistan got full membership within and under the Modi administration in UPA 2, in NDA 2, Modi 2.0. And ever since then, India and Pakistan have been participating at SCO. But it doesn't seem like they are, or India is yet to have that intent to revive SAARC.
Right, absolutely. Look, in particular cases and with particular institutions that make sense. For example, the South Asian University, which is part of SAARC, which is a big SAARC project. It's really, India has been really leading the charge on that. It is a joint project. They've tried to put money behind it. But that's one example of a case. But you're absolutely right that, the whole idea of the South Asian of SAARC was to build greater economic connectivity, greater bonds of political trust between countries in South Asia. So the country, because South Asia is really one of the least interconnected regions in the world, and you need that if you want to be a strong and secure and prosperous region. And I think that was the main idea behind SAARC. But I think that really the tensions between India and Pakistan on a political level have made things much, much more difficult for this bloc. You don't really hear about it being talked as much. It's widely considered that the SAARC secretary is very dysfunctional. I talked about the South Asian University. It's very hard because for many years, the university did not even have a governing, functioning president and so on and so forth. So there's this wide sense, I think, among people who cover foreign policy that SAARC has fallen into disarray. It's not working out very well. And a big part of that is Pakistan's continued sponsorship of terrorism. In fact, the big news yesterday, of course, was the terror attack in Riyasi in Jammu when Hindu pilgrims were shot at. Well, the attack was carried out by the Resistance Front, TRF, which is a group that was set up by Pakistan after 2019 and has been really a thorn in the side of the Indian security forces for the last couple of years. And so, it's all well and I think this encapsulates a big part of the problem, which is that Nawaz Sharif can put out a tweet and be very warm and welcoming towards the Prime Minister. They have a relationship, but on the same day, a Pakistan-sponsored and funded terror group carries out an attack that kills 10 people and injures 33. So I think that as you mentioned, talks of terror, I think that's exactly.
Shashank is also a dichotomy.
We know how the political dispensation, particularly under Nawaz Sharif, has been when it comes to India. I mean, I remember UFA, the SCO summit in UFA in Russia, where the two leaders met on the sidelines of the SCO summit. And there was a bold statement that came out where Nawaz Sharif almost agreed to and did not have Kashmir in the document, and that did not go down well with the establishment. So the dichotomy in Pakistan has to do with the establishment. There is one section that might want better ties with India because it has not worked for Pakistan when it comes to Pakistan's economy to have bad relations with India. They would have done way better and would not have been in the state of affairs that they are in should they've had good ties with India, because they could have gained a lot out of the economic prosperity that India has been witnessing. They would have done very well for themselves. There could have been much more prosperity, trade ties between the two countries. But all that has come to a screeching halt. And what we're looking at is the military establishment pushing its own agenda at the cost of not just the country, but the people. And that certainly is quite evident. Nawaz Sharif has always been known to make some bold steps which do not go well with the establishment, and therefore we've seen him being sent to exile twice over. And now he returns, or his party has returned, and they're again in cahoots with the establishment. So we'll have to wait and see how that policy really pans out for Pakistan more than for India, because for India, it doesn't make a difference what Pakistan's policies today are. The only problem that India faces is with the fact that there is Pak-sponsored terrorism that has always troubled India. Now, on another front, when it comes to foreign policy, spilling over to the other side of the aisle over here in South Block, from Ministry of External Affairs to Defense, Shashank, the fact that the Indian government, Modi's administration, the last administration, had said that things had gotten better in the valley, and that terror attacks have come down. But if you see the kind of attacks that we witnessed and the number of soldiers that we've lost, or the fact that there's still attacks happening, clearly shows that terrorism still remains one of the biggest problems for Modi administration and could pose as one of the biggest challenges in Modi 3.0.
Absolutely. And I think that you saw this a lot if you were covering the issue when the Riyasi attacks happened on Sunday. And a lot of the coverage was just that this is a very, very rough welcome for the NDA 3.0, because in many ways it challenges some of the cherished myths, if I may say, of some of the conversation that was happening around Kashmir in the weeks and months before the election. Of course, the government will have its own view on whether terrorism and violence have declined, but I think for the general public, this was just the election results in Jammu and Kashmir. We talked about it yesterday. The election of Engineer Rashid. It seems to have created a new political consensus that is, in fact, even further away from what India would have liked. So that's one thing. And of course, the terror attacks, I think, so just these last couple of weeks, I think, have been slightly rough wake-up calls in terms of what's happening in this part of the world in Jammu and Kashmir, which is not only do you have this terror attack, which has really shocked the nation, but you also have an election result, which for many people seems like we are in fact moving 2 steps back and not 1 step forward. So I think that certainly that is going to be a concern of NDA 3.0 in terms of how exactly taking a good hard look at what the policy has been so far and understand, is it something that we can continue? How do we want to change? Do we want to change? And I think that that is something that we will develop. You mentioned, of course, that this government likes to hit the ground running. I'm sure they will always, before the election, we were talking about 100-day plans for each government ministry and department. The NDA had asked all the governments to set it up, and I must imagine that Kashmir must figure somewhere very, very high on the list of priorities to the Home Ministry.
Absolutely. So, Shashank,
we've reported on all aspects of the External Affairs Ministry and how the minister has taken over, setting an agenda when it comes to various important aspects. He also chose to speak a lot in Hindi. Marked difference. The questions were posed to him in English, but the responses were primarily in Hindi. So a huge messaging there that this is an India where priorities will be set and the message will be sent to who really matter, which is the people of India.
Mm-hmm. I think that, I will say, having covered the External Affairs Minister for a couple of years, his Hindi has gotten a lot better. He's always been good, but it has. So I think he's been practicing, and I think he was trying it out on us as well. So I think it's been certainly very good. He has, I think he does take questions in this fashion. I think that, and his use of the phrase Bharat First, I think is something that you saw before the elections, when you sort of saw the President of India sent out invitations for key banquets, including G20, as the President of the Republic of Bharat, not the Republic of India. And so I think the External Affairs Minister coming here and saying that, Bharat First, I think was certainly certainly a political message. Certainly he was trying to say something about the BJP's particular view of India, its polity, its society, its civilization identity. That's something like the BJP likes to talk about quite a bit. So I think that that's going to continue to be a focus for the from judging from the External Affairs Minister's remarks. This idea of Bharat is also definitely going to be up there as a policy priority.
Well,
Well,
absolutely.
absolutely.
And
And
before
before
people
people
start
start
questioning me
questioning me
on
on
this
this
question
question
or
or this
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 minor
minor
discussion
discussion
on the
on the
language,
language,
it really seems that I have to clarify that when I say that when he's speaking in Hindi, he's speaking to the people of India, because Hindi is one of the most, one of the important and beautiful languages. Me coming from South India, I understand that there are many other languages, but a minister cannot speak all the languages. So we're looking at just the fact that he moved away from English and spoke in Hindi. And no political controversy here. On that note, Shashank, it is a good day, a good start for India Today Global as well. We're talking about India, we're talking about Bharat, we're talking about a new administration, but we're also talking about a lot of challenges, and we'll see how Dr. Jaishankar is going to handle and tackle those challenges. We've seen him do that well in the past administration, but there are important challenges, and this time around, in a coalition government, they will have to be more forthcoming in telling us exactly how the administration is moving forward on various fronts. On that note, Shashank Mattu, thank you so much for joining us from South Block. We'll keep coming back to you for all the latest developments from the Ministry of External Affairs. But for now, we're closing this live session here at India Today Global, only hoping that every time there is a big news breaking, that our viewers, our audience are going to come to us, because we'll be breaking it first here on India Today Global. Thanks for watching.